All right, folks, welcome to Nino's Corner.tv. I'm with 𝗀𝗏𝗃, right? I messed that up. I butchered his last name again,
It's
right?
a tough one, David. Yeah,
Say it.
Fluette.
I said it
Fluette.
right.
Dan Fluette. Yeah, you
Okay,
did it
all right,
right.
All right,
Yeah. Hey,
all
by the
right.
way, I've been working with Steve for 20 some years. He still can't say it right. So, you know, it's a
What
tough
is
one.
that?
It's French.
French. Okay, I was going to say
Yeah.
that. I was going to say I thought it
Yeah.
was French.
Yeah.
So 𝗀𝗏𝗃 has, yeah, you've been working with Steve Bannon. I met you at We Build the Wall. Was that 2018, dude, or
Yeah, it was
17?
17, 18. I
Man,
believe it was 18. Yeah. Yeah, when we started really cranking that out. Yeah.
I
What a
remember
great event.
all the effort and work that took. I mean, you guys did an incredible job. First off, I mean, there's no wall like it that I've heard of or know about.
Unreal.
The rest of the walls here in El Paso are just fences. They cut right through it. This one had like seismic detectors, right? Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
could. It was like 8 feet. How far down did it go?
Yeah, it was like 12 feet or something. I mean, it would have been really difficult to tunnel under that thing, you know. And even if they did, you know, you understand the disturbance before that. So it's yeah, man. It was that thing was like it looks like steel and concrete, but there's a lot of technology in that thing.
Well, the way you
And it
guys built it
was
was going up the mountain, man.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I couldn't even
Unbelievable.
believe that. Yeah.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about that is the Army Corps of Engineers said that it was not possible to build a wall there because of the slope, because of the incline. Yep. And
The
what
Army
happened?
Corps of
Yeah.
Engineers, obviously
Yeah.
probably a liberal,
Yeah. They
was
said
a
it can't be done. Yep. Yep.
wow.
And went right up that. I remember the first time I went up it in a truck on the concrete part. I was like, I was a little nervous, man, because you're leaning back. It's like taking off in a rocket ship. And I was
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
it's
I thought the truck was going to flip over backwards.
yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, you guys
Yeah.
were out there, man. You
Yeah.
made a big deal out of it. Steve was out there almost every day. I
Yeah.
met Andy. I met some good people out there and friends for life that I consider. And you guys really made your mark. You pissed off a lot of people on both sides of the border, obviously. But man, I don't think people knew or could understand how treacherous, how crazy that project really was.
Yeah.
And a lot of you, and I'm not saying you, I don't know if you did, but got in trouble for it. I know Steve Bannon, I think he got pardoned for it, but Andy went to jail. Um, Koufax went to jail, right? I mean, he's still in there. There's guys in jail because of this project.
Yeah. 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 I can't talk too much about that,
Okay.
the particulars on that. There's still cases pending.
Oh, I got it. I got
But
it.
yeah, it's, you know, we talk about lawfare and injustice and stuff, and that's really a perfect example, in
Well,
my opinion.
let's talk about the outlaws. Let's talk about the guys who defied the odds and were really true and staunch patriots, Republicans, and there's patriots on both sides of the fence. I mean, there's traitors on both sides of the fence. But these guys, what you call outlaws, which I'm very uh, offended that I'm not in there.
You're,
but
you're,
I
you're in volume two.
All right, cool. I gotta say, man, you made a book, a coffee table book on the outlaws of the people that really held it down, man, held it down for America, that went
Yeah.
against the grain, that were able to put their neck on the line and fight for freedom. And you made a coffee table book out of this, correct?
That's right. Yep. You see it right behind me over my shoulder, Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws. And what I'll tell you a story about it briefly is that, you know, I was the original producer on The War Room with Steve Bannon. Like I said, I've been working with him for, you know, really decades. Historically, we were working primarily doing documentaries, but then, you know, we did quite a few things with Breitbart and, you know, did a graphic novel and, you know, a bunch of live streams and like all kinds of interesting things. But traditionally, that was my association with him. And, you know, we started up the War Room back in October of 2019. And really just for fun, kind of for me, you know, I saw all these people coming through the studio. And just as a fun project to do, I said, hey, let's start taking, you know, shots of them, just portraits thinking that, you know, if some of them turned out well, you know, we put them up on the wall, kind of salon style, and have it like, you know, kind of like decorate the studio. But as I kept doing them, I started to see that there was a couple of things. First of all, some of the shots were really gorgeous in my own opinion. They turned out really well, and I thought that I was successful in capturing the real essence of some of these fighters. But I also understood that there's something bigger here, that this is like a period of time in history that we may quite frankly never really have seen before. And I thought it would be interesting to really start capturing these guys and try to understand, like, what is it about these people that make them so extraordinary, in my opinion, and such fighters. Because you have to remember, like, I've been working on this thing for close to 5 years. And a lot of the shots that I did were period. And if you remember, that was horrible. It was brutal. The way
But it either it either broke you or made you during that time.
Yeah. Well, and then the thing to me that stood out was these. Look, let's call them what they are. These people are freaking brave. They come in and they sit on the war room and they talk about sorts of things. And we got like Bobby Kennedy and all those great doctors, Dr. Malone, Naomi Wolf, Dr. Hatfield, and so on. And they're coming on and they're trying to explain what is really happening here, because we can't really understand it by listening to legacy news media. It's just you have absolutely no idea what's going on. You just hear talking point stuff. And at the time, these guys were being canceled, debanked, ostracized. They've lost jobs. They've lost family, friends. I mean, it took a lot of gumption, a lot of courage to stand in that breach, right? And say, you know what, this is not right. This is what's really going on. And despite of, or in spite of all the obstacles I face, I'm gonna tell the truth, And to me, it became a sort of like a exploration of
revolutionary.
Well, really, it is. Like, look, David, how many people capitulated to they didn't want to, because like, oh, I'm going to lose this, I'll lose my family, I'll lose my job, I won't be able to support my kids, which are very real concerns, right? That's something you've got to really weigh and measure before you make your decision. And for these guys to go on publicly and face that kind of backlash that they did, I thought was just really incredible. So the theme throughout the whole thing is this sort of, I call them outlaws and rebels, but what are they? They're just truth seekers, right? And they're truth tellers. But in today's environment, and particularly at the time, they really were rebels, and very many of them could be considered outlaws. So I really just wanted to capture that spirit, and
it really it's like the modern day 1776 of today.
Really. Absolutely. I mean, they're blood and treasure, right? That's what maybe not so much in the blood part, but when you're really risking your entire life and everything that you've built your whole foundation on. And that's teetering because of powers greater than you who are trying to take away the very most basic rights of Americans, and that is to be able to speak their mind. That's courage, man. That's a rebel spirit.
I'll never forget the great, I guess you can call it the Great Purge.
Yeah, it's a horrible position to be put into. And when you and this is part of the game plan, right? Is you're walking around and you're thinking like, oh, I can't, not can't I say that? I can't think that.
Yeah.
Right. And it becomes like this oppressive system where it's not even somebody else that's now oppressing you. You're doing it to yourself. And that's the game. Right. So, hey, I thought of a good word to switch out for this. Aren't I clever? That's really great. And, it's important. And I'm you're one of the few that were able to navigate those tricky waters.
Fun with it. I just had fun with it.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a horrible, crazy environment, which we still see.
I like
to.
Still,
100%, we're still there.
We're still in it, and I think until he's inaugurated and he's actually in office, I'm still gonna mind my P's and Q's and still play this funny little game I have to play. But it is what it is. So, how long did it take you to create this book, think about this book, manifest it, create it, and put it into publication? So how long did this process take you?
Yeah. Well, I started taking portraits, probably it was late 2019 or early 2020, shortly after we had started the War Room program. And like I said, it was not intentional that it was going to be a book. I had no idea that it was going to be that. And it just sort of over time developed into that because I saw, some of these really powerful figures who had really inspiring stories. And I personally became inspired by that. And I really wanted to capture that. And then ultimately, I approached Skyhorse Publishing, who I know Tony quite well, the publisher, who's been on War Room, a bunch of times. And at that point, I showed him some of the stuff that I had, and I asked, do you think that we'd be able to do something bigger here with doing a book? And then so slowly, I started, capturing people when and where I could. And then writing stories, and it like I said, it took 4 to 5 years, and it was, I rewrote it probably 3 or 4 times.
Are these actually real statements from people, or are they just you just threw these in
here? In my mind, they are. Yeah, I kind of channeled the Onion on these. Some of the back of the book stuff that they have in the Onion that I quite like, But yeah, it's a little ad that I made about the book, showing some of these people that are in it, and how much the left media will not.
So a lot
like
of these people were the ones that came through the studio in the War Room.
That's right, all of them. Everyone in the book has been on the War Room. That's why it's called Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws: A Pictorial History of War Room. I like to think of it though as. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. What is it? There's other websites too that you can order it on. Bookshop.org is the one I was looking for. But yeah, you can get it through any major retailer.
Pages, right? How many pages is it?
It's 5 pounds a book. It's
well,
heavy. You walk around with this thing, and you can do a workout. Walk around a couple of them, and
that's cool, man.
But it's a legitimate coffee table book, and the response has been just phenomenal, David. It's been more than I could have ever hoped for, to be honest.
You were kind of doing this behind the scenes, like this is
it was a side
Steve
project.
Bannon, like, hey, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Ultimately, I did. I mean, he knew I was taking pictures. Hey, he's in half of them.
Right.
I would use him as my model half the time and experiment. I was changing lighting schemes and setups and cameras and the whole thing. Trying to lock in onto his style, which I ultimately did. And he was in some ways a guinea pig for me, which I'm really grateful for.
So for like people that don't know, like the War Room, it's an awesome platform. And Steve Bannon's done incredible work, man. He reminds me of like one of the forefathers from the very beginning, right? Like this guy is going to be remembered throughout history for what he's done. A lot of people are in that book. What's the War Room Studios like? Like for somebody that doesn't know, is it just in a high-rise building somewhere? Is it in a basement somewhere? Like what is the War Room?
It's more like in a little living room. It's more of a basement, but it's just a quote unquote studio that was turned into a studio. It's not at a professional news studio with all that stuff. It was sort of put together.
So whose idea was this? Was this Steve's idea to create the War Room?
That's a great question, because I had actually been talking with Steve for some time about doing a podcast. I was like, Steve, you got to do a podcast. You'll kill it. It'll be amazing. And I don't know, we were doing a lot of other things at the time too. And I certainly didn't expect it to go in this scope. I thought it would be an hour interview show once, twice, maybe 3 times a week, that kind of thing. And it turned very quickly into, 4 hours a day, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours on Saturday with specials.
Right now.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you're the producer?
I was a former producer. I switched over. We're doing now War Room Films. So we just released our first documentary under that banner, and it was called Government Gangsters. That came out. We actually released it on. Yeah, you were there. Yeah, yeah. We saw you in Vegas, and that was our first documentary, Government Gangsters, and we've been touring the country.
Folks, and I decided to stop in. Look at those roulette tables.
You popped by. Yeah, no, that was a great event. It was great, wonderful theater. It was amazing. Yeah,
you helped 𝗂𝗃 put that together.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow,
yep.
that was an epic film. That really strung everything together. It really put everything together. I think from A to Z on who the players really are behind this.
Let's be real; they're not done, right? This is not going to stop. And as you know, we get closer to January 20th. It's going to be even more relevant to be able to understand what they do and to fight back against this and say, hey, I've seen this picture before and I'm not going to stand up for this, you know, and know how to fight and to target and not let them get away with that, because they're going to try to bog him down again. It's inevitable. Right, it will happen.
Lawfare.
Well, that's one of the tactics. Yeah, absolutely.
They're right now with all the scandals for every cabinet pick he has. More scandals.
Right out of the playbook. Yeah.
Here we go again. Here we go again.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But you know, the great thing is they've seen that show before, and they're like, yeah, there wasn't anything to it the first time. You know, with Kavanaugh, for instance, right? There's nothing there. It was all made up, in my opinion. And people see that and they're like, yeah, I'm not falling for that again.
But it's like the boy that cries wolf. They keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And just like after a while, you're like, all right, that may have worked a little bit.
They've quite lost their power. Yeah.
Lost it. Right. And the constant. And that's what I think. That's why I think that's a main thing why Trump is so important, is that he keeps exposing this to everyone, thus creating the awakening.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know, I feel like right now with the Trump win on the election, we got the high ground now. I feel like we're back in charge. We got a foothold, and it's almost like, I think General Flynn said it best. It's D-Day, not V-Day. We stormed the beach of Normandy. Now we got the high ground, but we have more battles ahead of us, which will create more rebels, rogues, and outlaws.
Absolutely.
So, folks, he's saying he's going to do Volume 2.
Volume 2's coming. Volume 2's coming. Maybe we'll have more than 90 subjects in this one. You know,
so how do you feel? What kind of challenges do you, since you work at the war room, you're right-hand man to Steve Bannon, what kind of challenges do you see transpiring going into inauguration and, let's say, the first 18 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, the hardest thing is going to be for him to, and let's be real, he's got a mandate, right? What we were just talking about with the social media overlords deciding who can say what and how they can say it and those sorts of things. That was leveled quite a bit with Elon Musk's takeover of X. And now you can understand exactly why they wanted to censor people, because when the truth gets out, or people's opinions, and people are allowed to dialogue and to put their opinions forth, there's a lot more robust dialogue in there, and people can understand what's really happening, right? And they can make their own really informed opinions about things. And we saw the demise, quite frankly, thank God, of the legacy media. They've lost their bite, and they're flailing. They don't understand. So what we're going to see as he tries to implement his agenda and the things that he ran on, and this is going to be the first 100 days, the first 6 months, the first year, the first 18 months. It's not going to stop. But you know, like we're seeing with his cabinet picks, the way that they're going after them, is it's going to be sort of a mandate on their morals and that sort of thing. Which I don't think is going to carry as much weight, but it's just going to be a freaking fire hose of this stuff. It's not going to stop. So I really think that the biggest impediment to him being able to enact his agenda is those sorts of, you know, that kind of trickery. And also, you know, look, the media is not going to stop. They're going to go after him, you know, teeth bared and not let up on him. It's just not going to happen. So, you know, when you say D-Day, not V-Day, it's 100% true. It's not time to celebrate. It's time to get to work. Right. And, you know, look, it's been shown that the people out there can be incredibly effective, and make sure that he's able to get his agenda through by not putting up with, even something as simple as, making phone calls and talking to your friends and neighbors and family and that sort of thing, and giving them alternate information. One of the great things about this book is that I really meant for people to be inspired by these people like I was, and to understand that, yes, these people are maybe out in the public view more often than, maybe some of the, what we call the war room posse members, but these are people who are, really committed to the cause, and they're really activists out there, and they understand that the power of the war room, for instance, but it's not just the war room, to get people to take action, and that's one of the greatest thing about the war room posse is these guys are 100% activists, and they will not tolerate. So if they've got sort of homework to do, they'll go out and do it. And, we've seen them melt down websites before, just through the sheer traffic. And then, inundate your senators and your congressmen with phone calls on things that they don't like that's happening, and really not tolerate it. And then therefore to understand that they are not just
warfare now, man.
Yeah, but yes, they're not just an individual, striking at windmills. They're not. They are part of a cohesive formed group that together have incredible power. And that was, like I said, that's one of the big things that I wanted to introduce in this book is to allow people to understand that, while really most of everybody in the book, in my opinion, is admirable, but so are they. And their ability to enact change, like they was all these individuals who people going out there and fighting and talking to their neighbors. And I don't mean fighting, in the arguing, but I mean not giving up and just continuously going after their goal and not tolerating, misinformation or, just lies and sort of cutting through the facade that we saw. And it's really incredible to witness, to watch those sorts of things. So yeah, to answer your question, that's what we're really going to see in the 18 months. And then of course you're going to have the pushback from all those, what we call the administrative state, right? All these bureaucracies and things that are just so entrenched in, and quite frankly, wasteful, in my opinion, on, in a lot of different categories that, there's just going to be pushback. So it's going to have to be a relentless pursuit of, of truth, and also of enacting the agenda. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be particularly fun, but it can be incredibly effective.
Well, courage breeds courage. I mean, it's like we do have the high ground right now. There was going to see a lot of change. We're going to expect a lot of change. And I think this is like the dead cat roll or the dead cat bounce. Like they're grasping for whatever now. Like this is their final last breath. Nobody's buying what they're selling anymore. That old paradigm, that old trickery, that old using celebrities for twerking at our campaigns, it doesn't work anymore. That shit doesn't fly, dude. People care about their children, about their families. They want to see a bright future for America. So I think
as truth seekers, as truth seekers, that's all we can really ask for, right? Is the ability to be able to do our own research, to be able to form our own opinions, to be able to talk about things how we want to talk about it. That's what's truly important. And you are seeing, I think, a sea change, which is incredibly refreshing. And let people argue it out. I don't need to be right every time, but that's not the point. Regardless of being right or not, you cannot tell me what to do. Like that 100%. I will always fight back against that. I cannot stand it.
That'll fly like a turd in a punch bowl.
And talking about 2020, I think we'll look back in history and understand that 2020 was probably the best thing that could have happened, as painful as it was to go through at the time. That I don't think that his agenda would have gotten through. He would have just continued fighting those guys in Congress and in the courtroom and all that kind of crazy stuff. Yeah, there we
I
go.
kept this
Yeah.
because I believe this is going to be such a huge marker in
Yeah,
history. I actually,
absolutely.
I knew to keep it. I was like, man, this is such a
Yeah.
pivotal time in history. I'm keeping this, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's going to be a
Biden
collector's
awarded the
item,
win.
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because it
But
was the
yeah,
turning point.
it was really good. But the beauty of it is, and we can't see this in advance, right? And I personally think that it's a case of divine providence, right? You can't see when you're going through it. You think it's horrible, right? But you can't see the bigger plan. But now we got to see the oddness and the lies and all of that was going on, and how people were being manipulated. And it's, again, with Elon taking on X and opening that up, people could see they cannot let the lie leak out. They can't be exposed for the untruths that they're telling. And it's party over everything, right? That's what it is. But it's incredibly horrific and sad to watch the levels of destruction that's going on with these different wars, and not to mention the stuff that's going on south of the border with the cartels. Those cartels that they do, and it's not something that I want anybody else to see. It's horrible.
No, and they're here now.
And that goes on. That goes on daily. That
Yeah.
stuff that they do is horrific. And talk about human rights violations. It's terrible.
I
So
tell
yeah,
everybody, I go study the Comanche Indians, go study the Apaches when they were fighting against the settlers here. Those tactics the cartels still use today. Like that's been going on for hundreds of years with these Comanche Indians, the way they used to scalp and torture and do the shit they
yeah,
used to do. That's what
yeah.
they do. And that's what we're
Human
up against. And I
sacrifice
think,
stuff.
yeah,
It's
the whole
horrible.
thing. And I think the whole that's my main concern. I live on the border, so
Yeah,
I think
yeah. You're right there.
yeah, I think that's the bloodshed that we could potentially see with these mass deportations, and who knows who's going to be activated within our country during that time. These cartels don't care; they don't play by the rules. They'll they'll murder innocent civilians to get one person. They don't care. So I'm
Yeah,
worried about that coming war,
yeah,
like everything else. I think we're coming into it, man. I think the big finale, the fireworks are about to go off. The big climax is coming. And
yeah,
I think you're going to have a lot more books of rebels, rogues, and outlaws, man.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah,
damn,
it's been relatively quiet, so we're
dude,
gonna
they're in
see
shell shock, are they
what
not?
we see. Yeah,
They're in shell
I think
shock.
so. Yeah, they're that, and they're kind of in the corner crying. They don't really understand it. They can't grasp what is going on
What
and
the
what they're
hell
sitting there.
did they lose?
They wanna like have like these big sort of meta ideas about why Donald Trump won. They can't understand that people are just fed up with this garbage, and they want somebody that's going to fight for them, that's going to fight for their country. They want what's good for themselves and for their families. They don't want all the madness that they're seeing. It's not just that they're undocumented. No one knows who they are, right?
And that's why they were using
What kind of
celebrities.
insanity is that?
These people are so
It's
disconnected from people, the
yeah.
regular, normal, working Joe. Celebrities have no idea. They don't. These people, Joe the plumber, doesn't pay attention to what Taylor Swift is doing.
Yeah. No one cares about that. And so, Donald Trump's able to not, I don't want to say it like it's in a sort of kind of manipulative way. He's not. I think he really just understands
The
what
common
people are
man.
going through, but also he understands what it takes to run a good business and also run a good government. And why can't those business practices be applied on a greater scale to government with efficiency and looking out for people and creating policies and legislation that actually supports people and families and things? Why can't we do that? We're told with all this word salad stuff all the time about how it's racism and it's you name it. It's all this crazy stuff that they spout all the time. But why can't people just be people? Why can't they seek truth? Why can't they look out for their own families and have policies and things that protect them? People are fed up. So yeah, it's going to be crazy, but I'm very hopeful that at the end of these next 4 years, we're going to see a radically different way to operate in Washington D.C., which I think is a long time coming, and something, quite frankly, I wasn't sure that I'd ever see in my lifetime. So
I
it's
got to
really
tell you,
encouraging.
our morale is definitely boosted after 2024, man. Everyone's coming into this. even if nuclear war starts, I'm like, all right, at least we have our guy in there, man. At least we got our guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it. Dan,
Yeah.
I want to say thank you so much. You want to show the book one more time?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's called
And
Rebels, Rogues and Outlaws. It's a pictorial history of the war room, and it's got, 90 different subjects across 464 pages. It's a 5-pound book, but it's a beautiful addition to anyone who likes not just the war room, but certainly rebels and fighters, and wants to be inspired. And it's quite a conversation piece, and I'm very proud of it. And I hope people that that get it will go read some reviews on Amazon, maybe the review that's up on warroom.org, and look at that and find that it would be a great companion piece to their library.
they can just go to warroom.org and see it there, or just go to Amazon. What's the fastest way to get this book?
Amazon. Amazon will get you there. I think they're running a discount too. So we kind of flew out of the first edition copies. It went quick, so it's in its second or third printing already. And as I said, we're looking to do our volume 2 that I hope that you'll be in.
Please.
And but hopefully it won't take another 5 years. So we'll see. But no, it's something I'm really proud of.
A lot more personalities are going to be bred out of the next 4 years. I have a feeling.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's going to be the fun of this book. This first one for sure is to look back in 5 years, because you've got some of the big names, like you got Tucker Carlson and Bobby Kennedy.
Is Elon in this one?
Elon's in volume 2.
Okay, cool.
He's coming. But and some of I like to say like half the cabinet's in there. Seb Gorka's in it. But you also have some young fighters out there that are sort of up and coming. And even since I've even started the project, we've seen the rise of a lot of these people. But again, the thing is, their fighting spirit, and they're in let's say inability and unwillingness to kowtow to people and to fight what's true and what's really in their heart. And
there's the true DNA of America. That is the DNA of America. That's the true fabric of America right there. These personalities. That's what America is made of.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the book, you won't really see any bios or anything. I talk about all kinds of things, about God and angels and demons and life and philosophy, but also, some of it's profound and some of it's just absurd. But for the discerning reader who's going to go through it, they're going to find a lot of, I call them Easter eggs, or little trolls, or there's a lot of layers to the thing.
So you talk a lot about the spiritual warfare of humanity.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it really is a spiritual warfare. I think we were talking just before we started on air about what does it mean to be a human being and to have human consciousness. And that's something that I really wanted to tackle in this book too, because I think it's something that's very important, and to understand that regardless of the stories and your upbringing or your background that you have rolling in your head, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's true and that it's real. And that it's important throughout life to really be a truth seeker and to understand to the best of your ability, what does it mean to be a conscious person? You're how you are as a kid is not how you are as an adult, and how you were last year is not how you are today. And everything's always evolving and changing. So really, I hope people would be inspired to understand that sort of, warfare, or just really seeking that's out there to be the greatest human being that they can, the most realized person that they can be. And I talk a lot about God and forces bigger than us, what's going on in the book. But so I think that makes it a little different than your standard maybe coffee table book, and I think something that takes people by surprise. I try to have a little bit of depth there in the writing, because that to me is as important as the images. But I really do try to understand not like I said, there's no bios, or you're not going to say, "Oh, Seb Gorka was this and that, and then he did this." That's not really what it's about. But it's about what makes him a fighter, what motivates him, what animates him. And I try to tackle that with all these individuals and make the stories maybe a little bit deeper than anything you'd understand just from reading a bio, which would just had no appeal to me at all. I just never wanted to put that in there.
Well, you sent me a book, but I haven't got it yet, so I'm just waiting.
I'm sure you'll get it as soon as we get off air.
It'll probably just come in. Probably
doorstep.
just came in right now. I saw a box coming to the door.
That's probably it.
Man, thank you for joining me, man. Where can people find you?
So I'm at Do It Fluid on Twitter and Insta. It's DOITFLUET. That's probably the best way to reach me. And I still haven't gotten a website up, which is something I probably should do this weekend.
All right, Dan. I appreciate you coming on, man. Send me your links when you can, and I'll post them under the video. All right, folks. If you're seeing this on YouTube, a couple of the words will be edited out. I'll have the raw version up on Rumble and ninoscorner.tv. Thank you, Dan, for joining me so much, man.
Dave, it was a pleasure, man. Great seeing you again.